there, Prog Noggins, all of you out there. Thank you for joining me. I'm Dave. This is Bleeding Edge, bringing you another edition of No BS Reactions. Now, mostly I've been keeping the reactions lately to a few special categories and new music. And this one I really wanted to do as a reaction because I'm talking about the new song from Asia, the new lineup of Asia. The song is called The Traveler Into the Light. Now, for those that haven't already heard it, I'm going to give you a little background. For those that have already heard it, I apologize. Maybe you want to skip ahead. Anyway, just talking about my personal history with Asia. Now, their debut album in 1982, which was an absolute banger and every bit deserved of being the biggest album of the year, as far as I'm concerned, was the third album I ever bought, and only the second album I ever bought that I'll still admit to openly. Now, I love that album. I loved it that time. For me, I think while in many ways these days it's maybe sometimes called pop or progressive pop, for me it's felt like hard rock based on what I had been listening to up to that point. And at that point in my life, I had no idea what the hell prog rock was, prog music. So that wasn't even part of it. Even the fact that they would sometimes say that the members of the band came from famous bands, I knew maybe those bands' names. If it was mentioned that they were progressive rock bands, I didn't really know what that meant. There was no connotation for it, so kind of didn't matter. But clearly, I was on the learning curve early to get into progressive rock and metal eventually. So anyway, Asia was a big album for me. It's one of my favorite album covers of all time. It's one of my favorite albums of all time. I didn't necessarily love all the subsequent albums quite as much. I quite enjoyed Alpha, although it didn't quite have the gritty edge that the debut had. And Astra was, it was passable in some ways. I don't know why they dug Mandy Meyer up. No offense to Mandy. Sorry, dude, if you're listening to this. But he just was not a replacement for Steve Howe. So, anyway, that's the story there. So, I've got a bit of a thing with Asia. I did follow them through parts of, most of, as much as I could during the John Payne years. Those albums weren't always necessarily easy to get a hold of. And I'll be damned, you can't find them now right about this point either. They're all tied up in copyright disputes and all kinds of other stuff and dead label limbo because they were on small labels. You just really can't find them. And I was pretty excited when I found out that the original members had reunited for Phoenix. And Never Again, I thought is a great song that actually ranks up there with some of the best of their original uh, two albums. And the rest of the album, maybe not quite to that level, but certainly enjoyable. And I did catch some of the stuff that Jeff Downes and John Wetton did together under their Icon name. And that was some pretty good stuff. So here we are. I didn't get to catch Asia when they toured in the reunited lineup. Never will at this point in time, unfortunately, now that John Wetton has passed. And of course, I don't get the impression Carl Palmer ever has any intention of coming back. So, what we have at this point in time now, of course, is a new lineup. And I'm not sure what to think about it. I know we've got Jeff Downes, who always has been the core of Asia and pretty much has always been the one that made things happen and got John Payne together with the band and had the albums that were created in the 90s up to the early 2000s. Always there. He seems to be the mover and shaker. And John Mitchell has joined them. John Mitchell, who gets around to everything, it seems like these days. He's got, I think, another Lonely Robot album coming out, which I think is reputed to be his last. I don't know if I read that correctly. So it's a possibility that I got that wrong. And alongside John Mitchell, we have Harry Whitley, who was not a name very well known to me, and Virgil Donati, who is reputedly an excellent drummer, but whose work I can't say I am deeply familiar with. So to a degree, all right, so you've got a really great drummer, you've got a really prominent prog guy in John Mitchell, you've got Jeff Downes, and you've got Harry Whitley, who I'm not sure he has that much of a profile out there as it is. I tried looking him up. He's not exactly prominent on the same level that the original four members were when they came together, but he's probably every bit as prominent as John Payne was when he joined the band. I don't know that I've ever found the story as exactly how Jeff Downes and John Payne hooked up together. I did read the story of how John Payne kind of got fired, but that's about it. So, anywho, I'm kind of excited about this. I'm kind of nervous about this. I don't know though whether to expect it to be kind of all right and pretty good like a lot of the stuff was with John Payne. I don't know that it got its due, but I also don't know that I would rank it nearly as high as Asia's first two albums. So sorry for the long prelude to listening to this, but I felt it was kind of important to get my background a little bit there. This has a little bit of a personal thing for me, although I can't say that I am the hugest Asia fan in the world, but they certainly are a significant band in the course of my musical journey as a rock fan and a prog rock fan, of course. So again, the album that's coming out November 6th is called Indigo, and that's them kind of continuing to stay away from the old pattern of having every album name begin and end with an A. Good for them, but still vowels for what that's worth. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Roger Dean is still be doing the album cover for them. He did a lot of theirs, but not all of theirs. Certainly, I think pretty much all of the ones with the original lineup. And the song is The Traveler Into the Light. So let's check this out. The new Asia lineup with The Traveler. Buckle up. I'm actually going to pause that there. Now I'm going to say that is an appropriately grandiose opening for an Asia song. Pretty cool stuff. And it certainly is evocative of their earliest stuff. It's got a lot of that driving force behind it. It's very active. It's got very much a rock edge. Kind of digging what Jeff is doing with the keyboards there, where he's got a little bit of ambient background. Then he's got the wouldn't call them triplets, but da 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 kind of staccato thing going on there. The guitars are behind that a little bit in the mix, but there's at least a nice rock edge to it. The drums are straight ahead, straightforward. I will say that the drums, despite the repertoire, that's the word I'm looking for, but the abilities of the guys in the original band, the drums were never typically massively complicated or complex in the arrangement. Carl kept it pretty straightforward in line with what they were trying to do at that time. So keeping that here. And so, yeah, all right. So far, so good. We are off to an appropriately rocking and grandiose start with this new song. And I'm going to restart it again here. Okay, one, what's that? That's Harry Whitley that's singing. I will say he doesn't quite have the velvety smooth exact tone of John Wetton, and he's got a really good voice of his own. It's, I think, probably just ever so slightly higher than John's range. But his phrasing, whether that is kind of how he put it together, whether it's intentionally similar, whether it's got something to do with Jeff Downes' writing. I don't have the writing credits on this here, so I'm going to scroll down, see if there's any mention of that. Should have looked at this ahead of time, but I didn't think to do it. I don't see we've got a writing credit. Um, why do I see Mike Portnoy in there somewhere? Portnoy found his way into the damn band. Ah, he's everywhere. Cracks me up. Anyway, no, I don't see a rating credit there. So that could be intentionally phrasing it as Wood Wetton. It's very much evocative of a Wetton sung song in terms of the phrasing, in terms of the tones, in terms of the notes and the writing and all that. So very much, like this could have easily been John Wetton singing in just a slightly higher register if I closed my eyes and didn't know who was doing it. So very nice in the sense he was, in my mind, a much more appropriate fit vocally than John Payne was. Not to take anything away from John Payne. He's a great singer in his own right. But his voice was just kind of notably different than Wetton's and had this unique tone to it that I never could probably describe in words, that just always seemed to me slightly odd. Probably a weird thing to say because he really is a good singer, and it probably depended on the song as well. But this is a guy who I think, if he's covering the old classic material from Asia, will much better replicate it smoothly than I think Payne probably did. Granted, I never saw them live with Payne, so I could be absolutely wrong. If anybody out there has done that, you can probably tell me how good the song sounded with Payne singing and how much he sounded like Wetton and brought back the as much as possible the album sound of the songs. Whitley here does a really good job with that. And the chorus, I almost like the verses better than the chorus, and that's kind of surprising because one of the strong suits of a Wetton Downes crafted song, or even a song crafted by the other members of Asia, was they had really great hooky choruses, really big, grand hooky choruses. This one is serviceable. It does not stand out much. Maybe it's one of those ones that might grow on me with time, but for now, it's just pretty good. It's not bad. It's all right. But I actually think I like the verses better than the chorus, which typically is not what they're shooting for and typically not what Asia did. But that's okay. Let us continue. Let's see where it goes from here. I'm going to pause again. I want to go back over that. Unusual extended musical instrumental flourish in between the first verse and the second, or the first chorus and the second verse. Not necessarily atypical of Asia, but also not typical of Asia. And Jeff getting a little bit, a little more virtuosi, if we could say that, virtuosic, sort of noodling a bit more so than Asia typically did. Asia usually kept it fairly restrained, with just very few exceptions. They did some long extended instrumental sections, but they usually weren't showy. Sometimes they were just very melodic. There is still one of my all-time favorite keyboard solos, though, in The Heat Goes On from Alpha, where, holy smokes, Downes just, he lit it up. That's just a great, great, one of my all-time favorite, if not my all-time favorite keyboard solo. It's just absolutely banging. This is not quite that. This is more flourish than it is solo, but nonetheless, a bit of a solo. Jeff getting a little bit front and center there, but I guess to a degree, maybe it's his band, so I guess he gets to do that. So we'll back this up ever so slightly. right, as I watch it some more, I pick up on some other things too, is John Mitchell's guitar work, sits in the background a little bit there. It's more of a supportive role, but there's some pretty cool stuff he's got going on there. It's not Steve Howe's style, and it's not gonna be. Steve Howe's pretty unique, and there's no need, I think, that somebody should be copying him per se, but he's not massively digressing from it either. It's kind of nice. It fills in spaces a little bit. It dances around a little and adds some dynamism. Sure, dynamics. We'll go with that to the song arrangement without necessarily again becoming massively prominent. And I noticed that Whitley is pretty much keeping in line with typical John Wetton bass lines in Asia. John, for all the stuff he had in terms of chops that he demonstrated in King Crimson, he typically spent his time in Asia keeping the bass lines pretty straightforward and simplistic. They were there primarily to drive the rhythm. They were there primarily to support the song as far as, the lower end. But they were never particularly showy. Not that I can recall with him. Never particularly complex. Again, unless there was something I was missing, and I can't say I've given deep dives to the reunion era albums, probably as much as they deserve. So maybe I missed some things here and there in the later work, but in the earlier work, he usually kept it pretty straightforward. Whitley seems to be sticking with that here, a nice little fill and a place here and there. And again, I was talking about Carl Palmer and his approach to drums in Asia, which also was very much more straight ahead, straightforward. Didn't get overly showy, didn't get overly complex. Donati's throwing in some nice fills here and there and throwing in some extra little stuff that I don't necessarily think you heard too much with Asia. But also, he's not massively overdoing compared to Carl either. He's keeping it tasteful, he's keeping it pretty restrained. But some nice little fills he's got going on as well.
One day you'll find yourself under a moonlit sky, tossing the sovereigns above into the well of your
All right, not half bad. Pretty cool tune there. I got to say, it very much stays true to the Asia sound of the early 80s and the reunion era. It's maybe rocking a little harder than some of the stuff in the reunion era. It's probably one of the reasons I didn't dig too deep into it because a lot of it felt much mid tempo. This is definitely a lot more up tempo. And the guitar solo was nice. It was a good, solid guitar solo, nice rock guitar solo, a little bit more in the rock side than Steve Howe would normally do. But that's fine. It actually fit the song quite nicely. So there's really no complaint there. And it's not that Howe did a ton of what you would call even traditional soloing when he was in the band. Pretty much everything was very compositional in their approach, and you rarely got the sense that somebody somewhere was kind of off on the thing and improvising and all that. They may have saved that for the live shows. Again, by the time I was old enough to be able to go, before my parents would let me go, I wasn't going to get to see them touring like that. Is what it is. Anyway, and man, there are parts Whitley is absolutely channeling John Wetton, like even to the degree I'm hearing him hit some of the vowel sounds, and they are just exact like he's forming his the vowels exactly as Wetton would. I have no idea if that is some sort of intentional homage, if that is him trying a bit to sound like Wetton, or if he just naturally sounds like Wetton. But he largely, to my ear, sounds like a young John Wetton, both in the vowels formation, both in the tone, like I said, slightly higher. He seems like he might have slightly more range, at least than Wetton did during his Asia days when he hit some of those highs later on. Solid stuff, you know. I wish it felt more memorable on the first listen. I wish it grabbed me a little bit more, like Heat of the Moment and Survive, Soul Survivor, and yeah, I'm gonna blank on one of those great songs of theirs. Well, sure, whatever. You know which one I'm talking about. For some reason, my brain doesn't want to share the words with me this moment. Anyway, it's cool. It's not as great as I might have hoped for. I wasn't sure what to expect from these guys. It's not nearly as bad as I could have feared. I feel like it's more fitting than a lot of the John Payne era stuff. And don't I hope I don't sound like I'm dumping on John Payne. There was some really good music that came out of that time. It just again, it didn't quite feel like Asia. It felt different, and maybe they wanted it to be different. I've never really read or heard. Maybe there was some intent for it to make sure it's clearly established itself as a different era. And that's pretty cool. I mean, they had some great players during that time, including Guthrie Govan and Ibrahim Aziz, you know, like, and even Ian Crichton from Saga jumped in on, I think, that final album with Payne, or close to it, and played with him a bit. So, I mean, there's some really, really impressive talent involved in those albums. They just didn't sound or feel like Asia the way the original lineup sounded and felt like Asia. This is about as close to the original lineup as I might have imagined. It just may not be, at least on this first listen, as strong a song as a lot of their stuff was at the time. It could fit in there pretty nicely without disrupting things. Um, but it's you know, we'll see what the rest of the album sounds like. I'm kind of excited for it now because this really strikes me as having a lot of potential. I look forward to hearing the rest of it and hearing more. Good solid stuff, and hopefully, if these guys come around and get to tour, maybe I'll go out and see them. And I can imagine them doing a great job replicating the original lineup's music. So that's pretty cool in and of itself. So anyway, that's what I got. What do you think? What do the Asia fans out there think of this? Are you guys excited for the new album? Are you kind of eh? How did you feel about the reunion era? How did you feel about the John Payne era? Do you want them to sound a bit more like the original Asia? Do you want them to sound like something different? Drop a comment if you could. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button, of course. Hey, please subscribe. There's lots of fun stuff coming up in the future. Be great to have you following along with us. Take a look at the Bleeding Edge shop. Buy me a coffee if you feel like it, if you are so moved. More stuff coming up. I might get to some other song reactions down the road. Who knows? We'll see what happens. Those are sporadic. Got other interviews coming up in the meanwhile. And Prog Council, of course, is coming out with a new episode very soon. If you've not checked out the Prog Council, do so. And in the meantime, that's it for me. This is me telling you, hang loose, never fear to deviate from the norm, and as always, keep it prog.